Hey, what's going on, everyone? It is Josh Guerrero here, and welcome to the All Around Adventure Podcast. Whether you're joining me for the first time or if you've been listening to the podcast for a while now, I certainly do want to welcome you here. And as always, I want to thank you very much for being here today, just because I know that you're busy and you have a lot going on, and there's also a lot out there on the internet these days that's trying to get your attention. But it just means so much to me that you've chosen to download and listen to this podcast. Now, if you are in fact new to this podcast and you're not entirely sure what we're all about here, this is the show where you hear amazing tales from afar and get the all-important life lessons that go along with them. Those will, of course, be stories from myself, as well as the amazing guests that I welcome on this podcast. But in this episode, you just have me today. This is a solo cast. I alternate every Monday between a solo cast and a guest episode. So in this episode, you're just going to have me today. I don't really have a fancy name for the solo cast like I used to in the past. This is just simply the solo show, I suppose I'll say. And like I said, I'm just going to be sharing my own stories, my own tips, my own ideas with you all. Typically don't make the solo cast too terribly long, maybe about 10 to 15 minutes or so. Something for you to chew on as you go into your week and think about. And hopefully it provides some beneficial insights that you can implement into your own life once you're done listening to this episode. Now, in today's solo cast, I want to talk about travel and stress, because I feel like if you're going to go out and travel the world or just travel around your own home country, whether that's in a business capacity or in a personal holiday capacity, stress is inevitably going to find its way to you in one form or another. And some of the ways that I've certainly experienced stress while traveling will, of course, be in things like flight delays, flight cancellations, foul weather. Maybe I'll have some not so favorable interactions with some locals when I go to certain places, or vehicle trouble, whatever the case may be. It's just there are bound to be stressful situations that are going to arise when we go out and travel. And this is especially frustrating when we travel for holiday, because we go on holiday because we want to relax, we want to unwind, we want to have some good experiences, we kind of want to escape from the rat race that is everyday life. And when stressful situations find us, it can get very, very frustrating, and sometimes it could disrupt or maybe even possibly ruin a trip altogether when stress finds its way to us and we don't really know how to deal with it effectively. So that's what I want to talk about in today's solo cast. I want to talk about ways that you can go about handling stressful situations when they inevitably arise. And I got 5 tips that I want to share with you all today. And now these 5 tips, they will not only help you manage stressors that you'll experience while traveling, but also just stressors that you can experience, or like I said, you will experience in your everyday life. So with that, let's go ahead and kick this off with tip number 1, and that is to microdose stress. Now, I think the quickest way to microdose stress, and what I mean by this is we deliberately seek out stressful situations when we aren't currently experiencing them. And so that way we learn how to manage them better. So that way, once again, when stressful situations inevitably arise, whether we're out traveling or in our everyday lives, we're better equipped to manage them more effectively. And I think probably one of the best ways to do this, and you've heard me talk about this on the podcast before if you've been listening for practically any length of time, and that is to do hard physical training. When you go into the gym, you go into the CrossFit box, you get on the jiu-jitsu mats, whatever the case may be, if you go out and do a hard training session in anything and really push yourself, get the sweat going, find yourself gasping for air by the end of it, that's a very, very stressful situation that we deliberately put ourselves in. But then once we experience something hard outside of that, though, it's like, no problem. I've done this many times over already by myself. So whatever life or travel is throwing at me, it ain't got nothing on what I've already been through. So that's the first tip that I want to share in this episode is to microdose stress. And I think probably one of the best ways to go about doing that is to endure hard physical training. Again, what I may do may be different from what you want to do or from what someone else wants to do, but find ways to do some hard physical training in your life. All right, the next thing that I want to go over, and this is a little bit more practical, actually leading into traveling in and of itself when you're heading out on your trip, and that is to include buffer time if you have layovers. Now, I feel like flight delays and cancellations are becoming all more prevalent these days. I actually had a conversation with a commercial airline pilot when I was laid over in the Dallas-Fort Worth airport not too long ago. And he was telling me that there is a significant shortage of commercial airline pilots right now. And so a lot of flights may be delayed or canceled in the future because airlines just simply aren't going to have the pilots on hand to fly those flights. And so, and I've kind of noticed this just as well too, as have other travelers that I've conversed with recently, that, just they're constantly running into flight delays or cancellations. And, that's a very, very stressful thing. And when you have a flight delay, especially if maybe it's like the first or early flight in a string of flights that you need to go through to get to your destination, if that first flight is delayed in any way, it could leave you running through your connecting airport to get to your next flight. And, it just creates all this stress. It's a little bit embarrassing to have to be running through the airport. Maybe you were, really hoping to stop to get some food or some supplies, and now you're not able to do so because you don't have a whole lot of time. So this is why I suggest including a good amount of buffer time when you're booking your flights to your destination. And it does seem a little bit counterintuitive, I know, because obviously we want to try to get to our destinations as soon as we possibly can, because obviously, the flight time and the travel time eats away into whatever time we're able to have for our trip. But I feel like it saves a lot of stress, though, if you just have that buffer time. And I usually like to add in maybe about 2 hours or so of buffer time for my layovers in the event, like I said, if there are some delays or something along those lines too. And this just helps me get my bearings. Again, if I want to get something to eat, or, maybe you're a rewards member with a certain airline and you can go enjoy the lounge for a little bit just to kind of like de-stress. Or if you got some work that you need to get caught up on, maybe you just want to get in some extra steps. I like to use airport layovers as a chance to get in my steps. Like I try to do at least 10,000 steps every single day. And so that's why having a little bit of a longer layover and including that buffer time helps alleviate a lot of that stress. And, I still make it to my destination in a good, reasonable amount of time, just as well too. And I've been very glad that I do that now because, like I said, all the stressful situations or instances that I just mentioned, running through the airport, not being able to get to eat, actually literally having my name being called over the loudspeaker, telling me to report to my gate because they're about to close it, that's happened to me. And it's not fun. And it sets a bad precedent for the rest of your trip. And so that's why I always like to include that buffer time when planning my layovers. So that'll be tip number 2, include buffer time in your trip, especially during the flights and transit phase at the start of it. All right, now the third thing that I want to talk about is make sure you are getting plenty of sleep while you're out traveling. And again, to some, this may seem a little bit counterintuitive because when you're asleep and your mind is shut off, that's, again, time away that you could be going out and experiencing things or experiencing the country that you're visiting or whatever activity that you are seeking out to do. But as I quickly find, in my day-to-day life just as well too, that if I'm neglecting on my sleep, it just totally throws off the vibe for the entire day. A tired mind is an impatient mind, a low energy mind, and a frantic mind, a stressed mind. So that's why I always want to make sure that I'm getting plenty of sleep. And this is why when I book my lodging is like, I don't stay in hostels anymore because I don't like being in a single room with a bunch of other people and have to deal with other people stumbling in from the bar late at night, getting up at 0:30 to pack everything to go catch like an early morning flight or whatever, or people like snoring really loud or whatever the case may be. It's just, I do not like my sleep getting disrupted because if I have a bad night's sleep, I wake up groggy, I wake up sluggish, and I have no energy to carry with me into the day to go out and do the things like that I want to do. I've even had days where I've slept so poorly that I hardly left the hotel room that day just because I was just not feeling well. I just wasn't feeling it. And so that's why I say make sure you include plenty of sleep. A well-rested mind is an energetic mind, a stress-free mind, and a mind that's ready to get out there and get after it and explore. So definitely make sure you are getting plenty of sleep when you are out traveling. All right. And the next point I want to talk about, point number 4 here, and that is to prioritize what you want to see. Now, unfortunately, when we go to places, we're not going to be able to see everything. And I've seen like a lot of people, and myself included, especially early on in my time as a traveler, is I would actually have like time slotted itineraries of the places that I wanted to go to. And I would be like, okay, 2 hours at this museum and then another 2 hours here and then yada, yada, yada. And then basically for an entire trip, I would have a fully detailed itinerary. And it didn't take very long at all before I just threw that whole idea away, literally, like crumpled up the itinerary and threw it away because, it just became so stressful when it's like I'm in a place that I'm actually enjoying and I want to spend more time in, but then suddenly I'm rushing towards the door because I'm trying to stick to the schedule and then go someplace else. So what I've decided to do in regards to this is I pick a top three must-see places that I want to go to when I go about and travel to a certain destination. And then I usually try to do those 3 things first. And once I've done those 3 things, then anything else I see from that point on is just gravy. I'm good to go at that point. And then I've often found that when I'm not really looking for anything specific, that's usually when I tend to find some of the coolest, most memorable things. One of the stories that I brought up in the past was when I was in Edinburgh, Scotland, and I was with a friend of mine, and we just kind of wandered away from all the main touristy spots, and we found ourselves in this market square that was really just only frequented by the locals. I think we might have been like the only travelers that were in this market square. And that's when I came across like this candy store because my friend hadn't tried fudge before. So we went in there and I got him some fudge. I had a very good conversation with the owner there, was talking about like his passion for making his own candy out of Iron Brew, which is this like orange soda type Scottish energy drink. Really good, actually. And I thought that was just a really, really cool experience. And that was just because, we have already gotten all the main things that we wanted to see out of the way. And then we just decided just to wander and just to see what we could find and be pleasantly surprised by. And, finding this candy store, I know which sounds kind of like a weird location to come across and tell about, but it was cool. It was a really cool experience and a great just to have that conversation with a local and just hearing his own stories and, just a very classic way of traveling and seeing the world, in my opinion. So that'll be point number 4 that I want to talk about, and that is to prioritize. And like I said, usually whittle it down to maybe like a top 3 must-see places when you go to certain destinations. All right, and the 5th point that I want to talk about here, and this is a pretty big one too, and this kind of goes along with number 1, microdosing stress in a way, and that is just to prime your mind ahead of time too, and just be realistic with yourself and just know that, Murphy's Law really exists when traveling. Like what can go wrong will go wrong. So automatically just assume that, flights are going to get delayed. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. All these things are going to happen. And not that you want them to happen, of course, but this is just kind of get your mind ready. So that way, if they do happen, well, then you've already anticipated that they will. And then now you're in a better place mentally to react to it and deal with it. And I kind of use the same strategy with a few other things that I do in my everyday life just as well, too. If I'm going to go and ask a woman out on a date, I'm just going to automatically assume that she's going to say no. Again, not that I want her to. I want her to say yes. But if I just recognize that her saying no is a real possibility, I've already prepared in my mind as how I'm going to respond accordingly if she does reject me. And so that way I don't let it bog down my whole day. Don't let my, self-confidence plummet as a result of that. Still recognizing my own self-worth, just, understanding that, she just simply wasn't interested. And then so I can move on without any sort of problems. And the same principle, like I said, applies to traveling here. Anticipate that your flight's going to get delayed. So that way, if it does, okay, well, good. I've already prepared for this mentally. I was ready for this to happen. Now I can deal with it. And then fortunately, if I was following tip number 2 and I included plenty of buffer time for my layover, well, hey, I already got this buffer time in place, and that's going to help sort of cushion the blow when this thing inevitably, like I said, went wrong. So those are the 5 points that I wanted to talk about to help you manage stressful situations that can and certainly will occur while we're out traveling. So just to recap these really quick before we call it a day here, the first point that I mentioned is to microdose stress. Find stressful situations to do in your everyday life so that way you can manage stress better in the real world. And when you're out traveling, physical training, hard physical training rather, is the example that I utilized here. The second point, of course, is to include buffer time in your layover. So that way, if you have delays or whatever else, you're not having to run through the airport to get to your next connecting flight. You have some time to get your bearings, maybe get a bite to eat, enjoy a lounge, things along those lines too. So definitely include that buffer time. Third point is make sure you're getting plenty of sleep while you're out traveling. Again, a well-rested mind is a calm mind, a stress-free mind, and an energetic mind. And so that way, this will actually allow you to get the full experience your travel to the fullness. So the fourth point that I want to talk about is to prioritize. Don't have a rigid itinerary that you're going to follow. Just have a top 3 must-see places at your destination. Get those tackled first, and then anything else you see at that point is just gravy. And finally, prime your mind ahead of time. Anticipate that things are going to go wrong so that way, if they do, you've already prepared yourself mentally to react accordingly. All right, everyone, that's all I have for today's solocast. I hope you enjoyed it and found it beneficial. If you did, let me know. Hit me up on social media. I'm most active on Instagram at allaroundadventure. That is just one word with no dashes, and I certainly like connecting with you all over there. Aside from that, be sure to tune in next Monday when I release a brand new episode featuring another fantastic guest, and I'm sure you're really going to like what I have in store for you on that one. Other than that, I just really appreciate you being here today. As always, it really means a lot to me. I know there's a lot of other things out there that are vying for your time. So the fact that you decided to use your time to listen to what I had to say today, I greatly appreciate it. And I certainly don't take it for granted. All right, everyone, have an outstanding week. I'm Josh Guerrero, and I will see you all next time.